And we are back. Now joining us to help us break down the deeper meaning of that Season 1 episode, Close Rick-Counters of the Rick Kind, is the guy who wrote that episode, Ryan Ridley. Thank you for joining us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Hey.
Also joining this chat is our good friend and Rick and Morty superfan and possible remotely controlled robot, Sam Basher. Woo!
Thank you.
All right. Well, Ryan, earlier in this episode, we were talking about the parallels between the partnership between Rick and Morty and Dan and Justin, which has kind of come up before in various interviews. But I want to know from you, how much did those parallels come up in the writer's room as you guys were breaking this episode, or just sitting around the table? How much have Dan and Justin emulated Rick and Morty just organically?
Well, I'll tell you, I used to think that Justin was Morty, but now I've come to realize that Justin is evil Morty. He is way more diabolical than you'd think, given his goofy persona. So I don't know, like how much did that dynamic influence the actual? I don't think it was something anyone was even conscious of for a long time. I mean, it seems to make sense because Dan is very much like Rick and the things he says and possibly believes and all that. Justin is more like Mr. Meeseeks than he is Morty. I mean, in the sense of he's not maybe as emotional or is I guess noble and heroic in the sense as Morty is perceived to be in contrast to Rick. He's more of a kind of just an insane, cartoonish being. So I don't know, but then of course it does seem to be an interesting divide, and then physically they kind of, you can kind of see like, oh, there's a shirt that I have that actually I don't know if this was, I assume this was never official merchandise, but I think Stephen Chun, one of the character designers, drew Rick and Morty as Dan and Justin. It's like a mashup, and it's pretty awesome. Yeah. How do they, what?
Was there ever a moment where like they accidentally referred to each other as Rick or as Morty just by doing the bit as they're coming up with dialogue and jokes?
God, no. I mean, that's the funny thing is, yeah, gosh, Dan would do the voice of Rick a lot. That was for sure. Which is interesting because obviously Justin is the voice, but Dan is the voice, capital V. And so, but no, I don't remember them ever. I one time Justin referred to Dan as Dad. So take that for what it's worth in your analysis.
We're talking about evil Morty.
Oh, yeah, well, talking about like the backstory and the grander story that you're building over these seasons, let's talk about evil Morty for a second, because was there a plan from the start about what his trajectory would be, and were you surprised the way fans like started theorizing and how they reacted to that character?
No, I mean, that's to me like the exact kind of thing that anyone would want to theorize about. I mean, it's such a mysterious, it's also a huge reveal that there are not only other, I think that was, well, technically the Love Potion number 9 sets up the idea of they go to the parallel universe in the first place, but then opening up into, but actually there's all these other versions, and then that episode revealed not only are there other versions, they might be completely different characters in the sense of like in this version of Morty, he's an evil genius, is one step ahead of Rick even. And that's like exciting in itself and super cool. And you want to know, clearly he has a plan because that episode ends with his Kaiser Soze moment that he was, right? So like, oh shit, this character is the Moriarty of this show and is capable of so much more, and that they're, clearly there's something bigger going on, right? So it makes perfect sense. People were excited about it in the sense of like, the Meeseeks are funny and they say funny things, but do you really need to see more of that?
I wouldn't mind.
Always a bit more.
I always pitched, let's do red Meeseeks. What were the like it's like how Superman's kryptonite was, well, this red kryptonite does this and white kryptonite. I was like, let's like maybe red Meeseeks do something or different.
Yeah, what would red Meeseeks do? So instead of like wish fulfillment or task fulfillment, it's like they murder someone?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought like it'd be cool, like, because Meeseeks weren't really, unless it was established, I don't remember that they were like manufactured by the box. I thought it'd be cool that you go to their world and you watch them disappearing. Like, they're being taken from some their own autonomous world where they have their own, they're doing their own tasks.
Yeah, they're in the middle of dinner making dinner,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
they get summoned.
And as soon as
Yeah.
they come to our world, it is pain, and they want that to end immediately.
Yeah.
Just so they can go back to playing Fallout.
Much like Superman. Superman comes to our world and he's got superpowers.
Yeah.
They come to our world and they're like, this hurts, and I have to do some of these dishes.
Well, we were talking about like you voice the bully character in the pilot. You also voice a lot of the chair and pizza and phone montage in this episode, and which is one of the most like inventive moments of the show. To me, that like opened the doors for the narrative possibilities and some of the absurdist like escapism that could happen. Were there any other ideas that were thrown? Like there was Greasy Grandma World. There was like the butt dimension. Were there like other pitches for places you guys could have gone?
I'm sure there were thousands. I'm sure that's probably what it started. I mean, much like a lot of the ideas for the show, when it comes down to after breaking the story and it's just details, it's like just write a whole list of ideas, And so there must have been a bunch. But I remember when we landed on that, especially the chase through the different cycling, that was like, it stands out in my mind as like one of the truly most joyous experiences of that season, because it was like, oh my God, this is going to be so fun and amazing and weird, and to like an easy concept just build off of like, well, if this is true, then that's true, and like there'd be homeless couches or whatever. I can't remember.
What homeless couch like drinking liquor out of a bus or something.
and then I think the couch like does like a double take.
So
it's like it's like easy basic comedy, but also ties into the multiverse concept, and it's a microcosm of what I think is what makes the show great, is that it's like it's absurdly funny, but then dealing with these interesting sci-fi concepts, and then where that all intersects with the characters.
And I'd build off that and say like the dark humor is definitely a big part of the draw for this show. And in this particular episode, there's one joke that stood out to me while watching it. It's when they arrive to the dome of evil Rick and Morty, and covering the dome are the Mortys being tortured. And there's a line that our Rick says where it's like payday at Neverland Ranch. So that stands out. Would you say that there were any jokes or joke pitches that were like left at the table or were outright rejected when it came to writing this episode?
Because of quality, or because of how dark?
Maybe censors.
I'm trying to think if I can ever remember anything that was deemed too intense. What episode is it where it's the one where they're in the giant land? And,
that is the Misi. That's the Ace.
Oh, that's
or
the B
Beast
story.
Yeah.
Okay, so and I think, did I write that one? I mean, we all wrote it, but I know I have my name on maybe that episode. So they have the encounter with Mr. Jellybean.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, almost a little too like, okay, guys, like we get it. You're making a shocking Adult Swim show where you. So I'm thinking if we did that, then something's gonna come to me that was too dark. I can't think of something in that episode. The challenge of that episode was just figuring out the story, because I think that was the story. That was the episode that really started to do what I love to do personally, or what I love the show does, is kind of create little mini movies. Like that episode could have been the Rick and Morty movie. If it was blown out into 90 minutes. Like it kind of has the structure of an epic journey, much like the Morty Night Run kind of episode. So that, I think that episode was more about just the difficulties of just figuring out the structure of that episode. And the Morty Dome was like, I'm trying to think what that was. It was some solution to some, like, it was always about like, well, wait, why wouldn't Rick know this? And how, because there's some, for whatever reason, Morty waves block Rick waves, right? That was the idea. So it was like, it's always stuff like, I can swear, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The FCC don't with YouTube. So it was always like the logic issues are more the problems than anything else, because all our sensibilities, I think, were inherently dark. So it was rarely going to be like, whoa, guys. I mean, if you watch anything Justin or Dan made before, there's nothing too dark.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that like what start as logical answers to puzzles become these like interesting theory components. Like the whole idea of Rick and Morty having opposing inverse brainwaves, like also reflects so much more about their characters, and how, because they're opposite ends of a spectrum, that like tells you so much about the dynamic of their relationship, and like the dynamic of every Rick and Morty relationship throughout the multiverse.
Yeah, and that makes me now go back organically to your first question, is Dan and Justin's relationship, is their brain waves are very opposite. I mean, Justin doesn't need for the story to be so purely logical from a Campbellian story sense that Dan is famous for proselytizing. And, Justin is like, why can't Rick break the fourth wall? Why can't we just have complete nonsense? And sometimes we'd be like forced into things like, no, I remember the finale of that season with the party episode with the monsters that stick people in them or what outside the party.
Right. They just
It was
exchange
like,
them
yeah.
and pass them off to each other.
Justin's like, I just want testicle monsters. Just make it work, guys. And we're like, great. Now instead of starting out with a great story idea, we have to make a story work around testicle monsters as the center of the orbit. And so that's, when it works, it's great and it's perfectly balanced. And sometimes, it's like one of them will hate what the other one's trying to do, but when it all clicks and works together in a synergistic way, it's great.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for unpacking this episode with us, Ryan. You can stay tuned for everything, all the new projects that Ryan has in the pipeline that we're not allowed to announce yet, but it's very exciting stuff, I'm sure. And thank you to Sam Basher for joining us. You can follow Sam Basher on Twitter and Instagram at Sam Basher. And we're back now joining this episode of Ricksplained to help us break down the season 3 episode, The Ricklantis Mixup, aka Tales from the Citadel, Return of Evil Morty. Coming back to the show, our friend Ryan Ridley. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you again.
And also joining this conversation is our good buddy and Rick and Morty superfan and self-described connoisseur of mermaid sex, Sam Basher.
Howdy.
Now, is that a Lighthouse reference or a reference to this one?
It's up to you guys.
Oh, man, don't spoil it. The episode.
Yeah. Now, Ryan, you co-wrote this episode with Dan Guterman, and we were discussing earlier how it seems to be the most political episode. Tales from the Citadel has like 4 interweaving storylines. They're all political allegory in some kind of sense. And it seems like this is the episode that they crammed all the political commentary ideas into, because none of the other episodes of Rick and Morty seem that political in nature. They have social commentary on human nature, on relationships, on like mental health, but not so much about like politics and social structures. Would you agree that Rick and Morty is an apolitical show? Is that something that the writers have talked about?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, although I will remind you that there is one episode that was a very bold attempt to be political, which is the B story, and I think it was the Devil episode. Might be wrong, but it's the one where Rick and Morty and Jerry go to Pluto.
Oh,
and
that's
a
right.
very
Yeah.
on the nose
That is
analogy
very,
for climate change
Yeah,
and climate
yeah,
change denial and the political status quo that would deny it. So, and that's not a super great story, and it's not a super memorable story, obviously. And the reason is an answer to this question is that, when you're like, let's talk about this, but then we'll just tweak it and make, half the faces white or half the faces black, Star Trek style, when it was like those kind of very basic metaphors for, what they talked about in the 60s. And with Rick and Morty, it's like, I think that this episode was born more out of like the organic political reality of the universe itself. We weren't going like, we're going to talk about police brutality or, every other, whatever the 3 other stories we're talking about, the workers' rights and all that kind of stuff. There was never really, we weren't thinking about that. It was just kind of like, what would be how do you examine this very complex society, and what's kind of the most interesting but also funny ways and surprising ways to see it, and how do you rearrange Ricks and Mortys and watch them in different status roles? The cops, the status is reversed. Rick is the low status character. And so that's, and they are obviously, is metaphor the proper term for that?
I feel like a metaphor is now an umbrella term for everything.
I know,
that's
it's
not
one
literal.
of those, it's like one of those things where it's like when ironic started to become used wrong, I'm like, am I going to come off like an idiot for saying it's a metaphor?
Yeah.
I'm technically a writer. I should at least know like writing terms.
Alanis Morissette ruined irony for us,
Yeah.
and then someone else ruined metaphor for us, probably.
Yeah, so I don't know, analogy, whatever. The origin of the episode was Justin was like, I want to do a Citadel episode. I want to do an episode that takes place in Citadel. And like, it was always going to be sort of a little more driven by the fun of that and less about, more the energy of the first episode, which was, it's fun to see Rick selling little dolls of Morty and all that kind of stuff. There was going to be a storyline. In fact, this is the one thing I remember Justin kept wanting was that it was, there was a Rick store on the Citadel that Jerry was working at.
Okay.
And Morty was his boss, and it was like, so it was sort of going to be dealing with that power dynamic, but that went away. And I remember, for me, I was like, I want that episode, or Guterman and I were like, well, we want that episode together. because we had the setup of the season 1 premiere of the Citadel getting, attacked, I was like, well, this is obviously like what happens when a society gets attacked or gets devastated in some way. And, I thought about Iraq a lot after the war, and I was like, all these powers that be come in and factions start, springing up, and the power dynamic, the status quo is totally thrown for a loop. And I was like, that's so rich. Like, we can just explore what that's going to look like, So it's, yes, of course, it's a political episode, but it's not like we're going to talk about Iraq. Right? But it was just kind of like, that's what would happen to this Citadel, like, given the premiere episode of season 3.
That's interesting. Yeah, it seems like season 3 was the year when, like, at least the reaction to the show, people started to view it through a more, like, political lens, a more socially woke lens. Like, people started to do more theory essays on, like, is Rick a good person? Should he be a role model? Like, more conversations about the Rick and Morty fan base. And it might have just been, this was the first season to come out after the 2016 election. And I feel like all of television started to be, like, looked at through that lens, whether or not the writers intended it to be that. Did you guys feel like a greater pressure, like, to dig into more of those themes? Like, how did you guys react to that reaction?
Let's see. So we would have been writing the season, because I remember ending the season, or me finishing my role, like, just before the election. Because I remember like, I hadn't seen Dan in like a week, and he used to live in my neighborhood, so I like walked into him like the day of the election or day after the election, and of course that was the first moment, was like, this is actually real. For months before that, people were like, I don't know, this could be one big joke. This, who knows? So when we were probably writing this episode, I don't remember where we would have been, like the summer of 2016 or something like that. And it, other than the obvious parallel between the political, it's a campaign happening, and you could obviously, although the truth is, the more evil Morty, who ends up being evil Morty, it's almost the opposite of Trump. He's someone pretending to be virtuous, and he's manipulating, and he's hiding his insidiousness.
He never speaks his mind. He's always got like a truth, whereas Trump speaks his mind.
Yeah. And so obviously there's a connection, but I think we would have probably done that anyway. I think it was more influenced by, just like if Trump wasn't winning, if there wasn't even an election happening that year, we would have probably had that, because it just makes sense to sort of, like I said, it's there would be a new political reality given everything that happened to the Citadel, and there's demographic shifts, and there's civil rights movements and stuff like that, and so I think we had obviously wanted to bring evil Morty back, but you don't just want to force him back. You don't want to force anything. Obviously, like, if it's really, you're staying true to you kind of let the story tell itself. And all of a sudden, I think it was Dan who said, like, oh, that Morty should be evil Morty, and this is the perfect way to finally bring him back. And also, it shows that he's even more diabolical than you would assume based on the Close Rick Counters episode from season 1, which was just sort of more like I don't know what his plan was. Like, it was kind of more heisty in its kind of structure. This was like next level. This is like he's possibly taking over the galaxy, universe, multiverse.
Yeah, that one, the first appearance felt like a teaser or stinger at like a post-credit scene, whereas this felt like, oh no, this was a master plot, like a Palpatine level type thing.
For sure. And in this episode, so you have your evil Morty storyline, but can you kind of dive into what it took to like manage all of these storylines? And you mentioned one that was on the cutting room floor and you had to drop it, but were there any other ones that kind of come to mind?
That were on the cutting room floor? Once again, I think I said in previous episode, it was one of those things where it's like, just the very beginning, it's like, well, what should the stories be? And so people were pitching a lot of different things, and I don't remember what, obviously we decided on those 4 that felt like a good cross-section, but I do remember that there was a time when, once the scripts start getting longer and longer, and that means that that affects production, somebody said, well, why don't we cut the Stand By Me one with the 4 Mortys? And I don't know if it was just because I was like particularly anal, where I just felt like, I'm like, no, it's 4 feels like the right number, the right balance. And also that they all tell, there's no overlap. They all really tell 4 unique stories. Like, well, what would it be if it was just all this? What would it be if, all the Mortys? What would it be if it was just, the Rick and Morty power dynamic flip? What would it be? And I was like fighting to make sure we didn't cut that. I don't remember what I did. Maybe I just started trimming things out a little bit, but I mean, there's definitely, I'm trying to think of what things we cut that were in that. There's probably a lot of stuff that was cut. If nothing else, like little details, like you see more on TV, right? Like I remember we wanted to kind of show like commercials for TV shows. You know, what would Rick and Morty, you know, what would be Rick and Morty, the Citadel's Breaking Bad be? You know what I mean? Like some show where Rick's always made to look awesome because it's basically Rick propaganda. You know, that probably stuff like that.
But with like Rick and Morty features Evil Morty coming back in this episode, and it has this like interesting way that the episode ends in the post-credits scene where like, you know, they come back from Atlantis and then Rick has this line like, "This will never have any bearing on our lives again." So like, are we done with Evil Morty? Is that what that means? Like this, you saw his rise, and we will never have to talk about him again.
No, I think that was meant to be ironic, and I think that is the proper use of ironic.
Yeah, we have a proper use of ironic finally. It's great.
My girlfriend loves this expression, dramatic irony, which is, you know, and she talks about how when she was younger, she would get stressed out in a movie watching a character who is behaving in a way, you know, it's like a classic horror movie setup. You know, the audience knows that everybody in the movie is going to be threatened by some horrible force before the characters do, so there's that dramatic irony of like, they don't know, they just open the closet and they're looking the other way and there's a killer with a machete in there. You know, that's what it is. Rick is an idiot. His own contempt for the Citadel and what it represents and kind of everything outside of his own, what he wants to do, his own selfishness, he's oblivious to how much of a threat and how much there is out there waiting for him. And how there's a foe who has been, I mean, that's probably where it parallels the election of 2016, frankly, is that, you know, there was a certain complacency on behalf of, I guess, the left, the liberals, that like, well, this guy is an idiot. We're the smart ones, you know. And that's probably what's going on in that moment. Rick is like, I don't have to worry about those idiots, those idiots, you know, and I certainly don't have to worry about a Morty. And it's just like it's this threat that his narcissism is just making him blind to. And so no, it's definitely not meant to be interpreted by the text. I think it's more by the subtext, right? And so I think, you know, in the Mermaid Puss, the Atlantis episode, which I can give you a little trivia bit about, is like, what could be the dumbest, most opposite Rick and Morty episode? Like inconsequential, you know, story was the mermaid thing. So that was the fun of going to bookending it. Like, we're going to follow that. No, we're not. We're actually going to follow something like this. So when that episode, I remember we wanted to fool the public with that reveal. And so the episode was starting to go out, meaning it was, I don't know, on Wikipedia or on IMDb is like Tales from the Citadel coming out whenever that was, October of 2017 or something. And all of a sudden, I remember emailing Justin, like, dude, you've got to change, like, people are going to know, if you want to mislead, people know the episode title, there's no mislead. So then all of a sudden it became the Ricklantis Mixup as the official title, which is funny, because it's like, that is the official title now, but it's really Tales from the Citadel. Meaning, I have like a shirt at home that my friend got me that's that graphic font, just that title. I was like, this is awesome.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us and helping us break down the Ricklantis Mixup, aka Tales from the Citadel. Ryan, it's been great to have you to chat about this again. And thanks, of course, to Sam Basher for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Sam Basher. And we're back. Now, joining this episode of Ricksplained to help us break down the Season 2 episode, Erotic Assimilation, is the writer of that episode, Ryan Ridley. Thanks for coming back, Ryan.
Thank you again for having me.
And also joining this chat is our good friend and Rick and Morty superfan and no stranger to all things autoerotic, Sam Basher. Boom. Oh, you owned up to that too quickly. Well, Ryan, we were discussing the theory of the ways that the Unity episode might parallel Dan's experience and the other writers' experience working on Community, because you worked on Community as well before coming to Rick and Morty. And I'm curious, like, how did the Community reference in this episode come into the script, and how much do you think Dan's relationship with Community and the Community fan base influenced the writing on Rick and Morty?
Well, can I just say, first of all, let's take a little time to acknowledge how good the title is.
It's no Rick pun, but
exactly. Then that's the very point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
It's like, does everything have to be a Rick or Morty pun? I don't think so.
Yeah.
If you have a good title, you have a good title.
It's a title that, like, I can't say without smiling a little bit.
Yeah,
it's such a good...
Sums it up perfectly. God, I wonder if there's some correlation between non-pun titles and the quality of the episode. Because Total
This
Recall
is a great one. Total Recall
is a pun title. Never mind.
Immediately defeats your thesis.
Yes. So I think that it's hard for a lot of creators to not get influenced by what fans are expecting or what they want, and there's a dangerous path you can go down of that, of just going like, I guess they want more of this popular character. And I am not a fan of indulging that. I say they love these characters, so let's not give them more. Let's go to the same well these characters came from.
Yeah.
Well, a different well, you know? And so, I don't know. So I think season 2 is when the show became a hit, I guess. Whatever metric you measure that by. Like, it was when suddenly it was like, oh, this isn't just another Adult Swim show that, you know, a bunch of goofballs are making. It was like, people actually care about this, and it's breaking through into a higher plane and of awareness. And so I think that's when it started to affect us. I'll just say us. And suddenly it was like, things became a little less relaxed in the writing, and suddenly it was like, no, this has to be amazing. This has to be amazing. Which I think with Community, even though I can't speak to the first 3 seasons, certainly not the 4th season, but I guess Dan was probably like that from the beginning, because he was like, this is my thing. This is my legacy. This is how I'm going to prove to the world, you know, that I'm great. And he did with that show, obviously. And I don't know if he treated Rick and Morty that way at first. I think Rick and Morty was his friend Justin's show that, you know, he was like, you know, hey, relax a little bit. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, Rick and Morty, let's face it, eclipsed Community culturally. And that was probably a difficult thing to get for everyone, especially Dan, to get his head around. And did I say anything that could possibly insult anybody right now?
No.
I mean, okay,
so.
good. So the point is, I think that, you know, it was, I guess, to answer the question, if I am, is it's about how much you let anyone else besides you and your creative collaborators influence the direction you think a show should go.
Some of the things that Rick gets to do with his ex-girlfriend, Unity, does feel like there's just a lot of specific random things. Like, there's a moment where he wants to have an orgy with every redhead he can find in a stadium filled with people who look like his dad.
Yeah.
Like, how much of this comes from, like, writers' like lives themselves? Is there any, like, because I mean, Dan Harmon's ex-wife is a redhead, you know, like, how much of this is like inside jokes with writers, if it's not Dan and Justin, other writers around the table?
I mean, it wasn't just, you know, what's chicken and the egg. It's why did Dan marry a redhead is the real question. The point is, yeah, a lot of that stuff gets seeped in there. I mean, I think I'm a narcissist. No, I'm not a narcissist. I just realized I'm not a narcissist. It's one of these things we throw around like genius. Like, let's stop throwing this around willy-nilly. These are reserved for a small few.
Break the glass on narcissists.
I'm self-involved, you know, like anyone. So take this with a grain of salt. I think I remember pitching this idea. How do you combine the big Star Trek level episodes? It's obviously no secret that it's very Borg inspired. With like a really grounded like episode of like a Showtime show about like, you know, Californication, like dysfunctional sexual, you know, narcissistic relationships and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, you know, we've all had those kind of, well, we've all had up relationships, of course, and some people more than others. And I assume Rick is going to have the most up relationships because he's an alcoholic, insane, narcissistic genius. And so I thought about the idea of, you know, the classic thing of your ex, you tried to kind of keep your thumb on, you know, and you were happy that they were lower status than you, and that made you feel better about yourself. But then what happens if you run into them later and they're as successful, if not more successful, or higher status or equal status or whatever to you, and you're going to start to, and not only is it whatever the chemistry that brings you two together and the dysfunction that brings you two together, but I think Rick, you know, it was fun to like play with the idea of Rick wanting to bring her down a few pegs. I mean, fun in a dark way.
Yeah, because she's on her way to becoming a god, she says.
Yeah,
like, she wants to assimilate as much of the universe as she can. And that's exactly what Rick wants, is he wants to be god of his own universe.
He sees himself that way and states it. Now, when you were writing this episode, were you ever worried about how Rick's suicide attempt might play out, or how it would be, you might respond to it?
no. I mean, I think at that point, especially, it was a natural extension of a lot. I mean, season 1 ended with "I'm in great pain, please help me," revealed to be his catchphrase. So it's no surprise that he was in great pain, and eventually, if you don't have help, you're gonna maybe go the other way. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe the audience was. I don't know. Was the perception that was like, holy shit? I can't. Being on the other side of things, I never really thought about it. I just like, this makes sense to me. But I think that taking a step back stylistically, I think I remember Matt Roller, who's a writer in season 2, pitched sort of like, let's do like a Breaking Bad style ending. What are these, or whatever, that's another way of saying peak TV style, Mad Men-y dramatic endings. And so I think that was kind of the meta context for doing that. And and it also makes sense. It wasn't arbitrary. It was like, yes, he would probably maybe drunkenly try to kill himself.
Yeah.
Well, okay, with that, do you see Rick's character at any point in the 50 years that the show's going to go on, or however long, him becoming mentally healthy, or are we just going to be seeing a constant downward spiral for his character?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't know. I'm not involved in the current season, so I don't know what trajectory they've decided to turn. Maybe the most interesting, ironic thing in the world would be season 4 or 5, whatever, is Happy Rick. I mean, I'm a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and my favorite season was season 6 when they were like, let's just make everybody in the show f***ed up in season 6. And Buffy's f***ed up, and she's having a fling with Spike, who was like her enemy in the first, 2 or 3, 4 seasons. And so that was such a great departure. So maybe the most interesting departure for Rick was that he gets healthy one season. Hopefully it'd still be funny and interesting. Because, the danger is like just being dark for dark's sake and just, not having the characters evolve and grow. I mean, there are certain shows that shall remain nameless that, you're like, well, just because you're animated doesn't mean you have to stay the same for 30 years. What if the 2 main characters were divorced? What if the little baby that sucks on the pacifier suddenly just died? Come on,
Switch it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess after so long of doing it the same way, then at that point you're committed to staying on that path, it'd feel like a betrayal. Unless they do want to end it, which things should end eventually, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all stories. Yeah, that's the difference between like a story is something that has, whether it's a TV show or a book or a movie, like there's like, this is it, and this is the that's the reason why TV show finales are often like dissatisfying, because it's like always like, well, this wasn't really planned as this perfect sphere. It was like, so we're just like, guess this is what would happen, So I don't know. I'd be curious how Rick and Morty continues to evolve.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that makes like Rick and Morty unique is most TV shows are set up just to be repeatable, duplicatable for 6 seasons in a movie. And Rick and Morty is one that's like, no, these characters are on trajectories and they are going to change and there are consequences. Like when C-137 Rick and Morty come to the new dimension, like their graves stay there, and it comes up in a later episode, another later episode where they have to dig themselves back up. So it's interesting to see a show that like goes for broke every episode, but like has to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, I mean that's because it's a reflection of real life.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as that show is absurd, it's it on a deeper level beyond the cosmetics of the animation and the aliens and all that. It hopefully resonates as something that is relatable. Like I said, this episode, it's like that's a relationship that I'm sure a lot of people have experienced, and I think specifically people involved in the show probably experienced. I'm not saying that was however I experienced anything, but you could take a kernel of a feeling you've had and extrapolate it to a character and a scope as big as Rick.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Ryan, for helping us break down autoerotic assimilation. I can't say that it's such a great title. It's been so great to have you here again. And thanks again to Sam Basher for joining this conversation. Follow Sam on Twitter and Instagram at Sam Basher now. And we're back. Now, joining us to discuss the Rick and Morty Season 4 premiere is Rick and Morty writer Abed Gheith. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Howdy do.
Howdy, yes. Also joining us is friend of the show, Rick and Morty superfan, and probably trapped in a time loop, though he doesn't know it yet, Tommy Bechtold.
I feel like I've been here before.
Well, earlier this episode, we were talking about how this episode has this time loop plot structure that's based on Live, Die, Repeat and Groundhog Day, but it also does something that Rick and Morty's never done before and give Morty a semblance of a fate, of like a destiny that he is either steering toward or steering away from, which is interesting because the show has its famous no time travel rule. I don't think it necessarily breaks that rule, but it gets closer than it's ever gotten before. Abed, can you tell us like how that rule came about and how it's like guided Rick and Morty over the seasons?
I mean, I don't know the official reason, but I mean, as a science fiction kind of nut, I will say that time travel's very like an old hat. It's just been done so many times. So to make a sci-fi show and use it feels like an old trope.
Yeah.
That you're just sort of rehashing old ideas.
Yeah, we were talking before the show about how like even the Marvel Cinematic Universe is like, okay, I guess we'll do time travel too as a way to explain things. And you know, as
It's like the writing the alarm clock, waking you up from a bad dream when you're a kid writing short fiction, when you do like creative writing, and you're like, I don't know how to end this. So you just go, I woke up and it was my alarm clock and it was all a dream, and then your teacher tells you not to do that, and then you repeat 7th grade. I'm sure we've all had that experience. That's what time travel is.
You had to get held back, and you just justify it by saying.
And I was already the biggest kid, so being the biggest kid 2 years in a row, not good for your ego. Anyway.
Well, I had that, but with underwear on.
I mean, like, I think it's great that Rick and Morty avoids like time travel. Part of my soul will break if they ever do that. But I love that they're willing to let themselves do time loops and like understanding of one's destiny and whether or not you want to move toward that or away from it. Are there other like time travel-esque plots that we'd probably be okay with Rick and Morty doing if they wanted to explore that?
I don't know. I mean, you know what I would think would be very interesting is this like maybe the like final 70th episode.
Yeah.
They maybe did a time travel episode.
Oh, finally they.
And almost in a way to like go, all right, now we're gonna do the really cool thing that we shouldn't have ever done.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it. So it seems like it would be a good challenge to make that finally.
Yeah, I feel like you guys have smart enough science fiction people in the room that you could actually do a time travel story that is both like logical and makes sense, but it's also like entertaining.
And the self-awareness of that show, to me, would be able to they do the best time travel episode because they'd be able to comment on it constantly about how they're doing it differently, or they're selling themselves short or whatever, or they're copping out by doing it. So there'd be a lot of, I'm sure, clever time travel references from many other works of science fiction, which is kind of what is one of my favorite parts of the show, is that it draws from these other things, but also kind of identifies if they're bullshit or not. So
we were also talking about Lost before this, and how like Lost had a version. They had a couple different versions of time travel, which is probably not a great idea. But like one of the ones they had was the whole like Slaughterhouse-5 notion of like being unstuck in time, like your consciousness is being displaced within the same body throughout its own points in history. Like I feel like Rick and Morty could do a version of that. Like it's not necessarily time travel, it's just your mind is swapping to different points in your own timeline or life.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way, because Slaughterhouse-5 is probably like the best time travel book. Yeah, so like that would be great. But I mean, also, who I don't think any fans have read it.
It's kind of dated.
So you probably get away with it, actually.
Yeah, right. That was something that like I read in high school and it like blew my mind. I'm like, why isn't every time travel story Slaughterhouse-5? It's the only one that makes sense. Like you can time travel to your death and it's just a purple void and that's all that's there. And
what a cool name, Slaughterhouse-5. It's like you think it's like a Jason movie.
Yeah. So this episode we saw one of my favorite gags, the red Meeseeks. Which is just a Kirkland brand Meeseeks that it seems kind of lazy or unenthusiastic smoking. And we had Ryan Ridley on a past episode of the show, and he talked about that was apparently like a pitch of his that has been brought up in the room forever and ever. And we're kind of speculating on what a red Meeseeks is. So it's crazy to see it in the episode. Does this set up a potential universe of different colors of Meeseeks, the way that like Yoshi's Island had like a red Yoshi, a blue Yoshi, a yellow Yoshi? What would other colors be?
I would hope so, because that would be a fantastic episode. I kept wanting them to revisit Meeseeks.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's such a great idea that like it would just be an amazing episode to like have a whole planet. But I think Justin's obsessed with Nintendo, so I think that's where that comes from.
Oh yeah, his Yoshi's Island. I wonder if that would be fascinating, just the way they had Tales of the Citadel, to have like either a planet or a dimension of Meeseeks that they get like like dusted away or like raptured suddenly from whatever they're doing, and now they have to be summoned to be this genie in some other world, and they brought back and they're like older and tired and traumatized. And I'd love to see like if a yellow Meeseeks is like too frenetic or something like that, or speaking another language, or some
He'd
of them.
be afraid, right? He'd be a
Yeah.
coward.
Oh, the coward. Yeah. Cowardly
Yellow
Meeseeks.
streak down his back.
Well, you have written on the past interdimensional cable episodes, and it sounds like you were like a big part of like all the pitches and the crazy one-off ideas that were in there. Were there any ideas that just you didn't have time for, or they didn't make it in the episode through the animation process or the VO process?
Oh well, yeah. Oh good God, there's a couple stories. During the first season, like I remember pitching something that was like a homeless man who had a steam engine stomach that he had to fill with coal, and so he had to eat a lot of coal. And I mean, I don't know if that was a good idea or not. I just remember Dan like looking at me, and he kept questioning the logic of it. Like he kept saying like, so the guy's homeless, and what does he do? Like why does he figure out that he needs to eat coal? Like there's all these like, he was just like taking it apart bit by bit and analyzing it. I didn't have all the answers.
It doesn't fit in the circle. It stops
Right.
at 3.
There was like a technical, he wanted it badly,
Yeah.
but he just needed some kind of logic, and I didn't have it. I was just like, I don't know, I just like the idea of him having a steam engine stomach. It's funny to me. So it was like more just trying to think of a visual, funny thing, because I'm a big animation fanatic.
Yeah.
So I just like to see stuff that looks funny.
Sure.
You know, so that was kind of my inspiration working on it. But there was another thing. I think it's probably animated on like the special features, but there was one with butthole ice cream, where it was like you go to Yogurtland, you know, and it would just be butts just shooting out like poop, and like I think Ridley's like, this is disgusting. And Ridley was so, Justin loved it. Justin was like, that's going in the episode. I love it. It's great. Oh my God, it's shooting out poop. I love it. And then Ryan's just like, it makes me sick. You know, Ryan just put his foot down. So I think it's animated, but in black and white. So it's not, it wasn't fully finished.
Yeah, I got it.
Like, and then, well, they might have done like this stop motion thing of it.
Yeah.
Like Stupid Buddy or something.
Yeah, I mean, we've all thought it. Like Nathan For You's pilot episode was just like the poo flavored froyo.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
It looked
that's right.
I can't not think about it when I.
Oh, and
Yeah.
this is interesting. Well, I don't know if this is on the commentary or not, but so the hamster and the butts,
Yeah.
that whole thing. Now that was an episode idea.
Oh, it's
That I had.
another.
I said they
separate
should
world.
go to a planet where those are running around. Once again, Dan is like zeroing in on me and saying like, so are there apartments in there? You know, what does it look like inside?
Do they have currency?
Yeah, do they
Yeah.
escape?
Yeah, are the
you know?
butts their homes, or are those like their clothes, or like mecha suits, or their cars, or something?
But see, that's what's crazy is the actual episode is that conversation. Remember? Like they're all asking questions about it. Yeah, and that's based on Dan asking me questions. He's so fascinated with the butts, like the hamsters and the butts. He wants to know all the in and outs. And like, yeah, and I was just like, I don't know. It's like it's in my head. I don't know where it came from.
Yeah. I would say Fascist Morty in this episode seems like a nod to the fans. Like, because there's these lines where Rick is asking him to say, well, just tell me something that you like. And he's like, just Mr. Meeseeks. And he says, you will go where I tell you to go. And he's like pining for this good old days of Rick that probably don't exist. And then Nazi Morty ends up dying in this episode. Like, do you think this comes from a place of the writers feeling exhausted of the fans trying to have too much control over the direction of the show?
I'm sure that that's a Dan kind of like feeling more than the other writers. Like, I mean, I think he's become I mean, I don't like hang out with him every day, so I don't know his state of mind. But I can imagine it's exhausting to try to write a show that tops what you've done, but then satisfy all these maniacs who are just never satisfied. You know what I mean? Like you can't make something, you can't please everybody, sadly.
Yeah.
And that show certainly does please a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's doing fine. They're doing fine, but yeah, like it's most definitely based on that.
Yeah, it's crazy how like they're not just doing fine. Like they had this long wait between season 3 and season 4. And like, I thought the season 4 premiere was great. Like, McMahon did such a great job on the script, all the animation. Like, it's packed with jokes. Like, It's one of my favorite top 5 episodes of the series.
I saw that animatic very early,
yeah,
and I seriously thought it was going to come out later.
yeah.
But when it was the first episode, I was like, oh, they're just going to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to watch it twice because I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I mean, I loved it. It was very funny. And like you said, the jokes, I think for me, it was almost harder because there were so many jokes that I was having trouble following the storyline because I was like, either laughing or trying to figure out why, like, oh, how am I not getting this? And then, so I thought it was a difficult watch in a good way. Like, it was a complex watch, which is good. I think they didn't take their fans for granted. They were like, you guys can all jump right back on board this train and go. And like, we'll hit the ground.
And this is a show that gets watched twice. It gets paused.
Yes.
People like go back and like go back 10 seconds. And for me, it was like anytime they were seeing their futures and you just see these shards of different futures. I'm like, oh, that's like an alien thing. Oh, that's a T2 thing. And
wow, I didn't even think of that because I was just, there was so much going on that I didn't even get to focus on that crystal. So.
There's just so much. And each one of those is like its own separate episode that you could just like imagine Rick and Morty playing out.
It was amazing.
It was
crazy.
probably all the episodes they tossed aside.
Right, yeah.
You know, they didn't do.
Yeah.
They all ended up there.
That's great.
Yeah. Or what, this is actually what sometimes they do is they make sure every artist throws in a different idea.
Yeah.
So
love
everyone
that.
kind of gets their little bit of something.
It'd be like in Coco if they filled the underworld with like other dead ideas of Pixar animated shorts and didn't make it in.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Now I want to see a cartoon just about that.
Yeah.
It's just about dead versions of Jerry from Jerry's
Cartoon
Game.
Underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a subplot this episode that involved Hollow Rick, the hologram version of Rick, and he takes pride in his hologram existence until he finally gets a corporeal body from the feral flu and he becomes evil, and they stab him with the wasp pincer and it goes in his eye, and then the wasps spawn and they burst his head open. Rick has this great line of, I know there's a lesson here, but I'm not gonna be the one to figure it out. So I feel like it's our job to figure out what the that means. Like, what does it mean to have a giant hollow Rick whose whole existence is about taking pride in his like marginalized existence, but then turns evil and has his head burst open by wasp Ricks?
I mean, I guess Rick is a monster.
Yeah.
He's not a good person, and deep inside there's probably nothing. You know what I mean? So it's like, I always don't. I mean, look, I love the show, right? It's a great show. It's better than anything on TV right now, and I'm biased, but I do think Rick is really mean.
Yeah.
He's just like poor Morty just can never get a break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I think. I think he's just an evil, horrible person.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of also just, I mean, like one of the things I do like about Rick and Morty, obviously, a lot of people do, is that they do go cynical on stuff. Like, not cynical in a mean way, but they do kind of expose the kind of dark nature of people. And like, to me, this was just kind of a broad thing of like, we all have these friends, we all know these people that get behind these causes and they get very passionate, and then the opportunity to go another way comes up that's like either more selfishly lucrative financially for them or pleasure seeking for them, and then they immediately turn their back on the cause that they had. So it's like, it just shows how corruptible we all can be. Like the second he got the thing that he was fighting about, having equality to, instead he just got to be the thing that is perceived to be better, which is having an actual form, a mass body. He immediately abandoned his compassion and his like empathy for people and became a monster.
It was crazy how fast that happened. I think the speed, the moment he got a taste of like having flesh, he turned into evil god.
But we see that on social media. There's people where like all of a sudden they'll put a tweet out and they'll start getting attacked by people that were on their side before, whether it's a political thing or a cause, and all of a sudden they lash out and become angry and like go against you can read their entire timeline before, and it's all sensitivity towards this subject matter, and all of a sudden they're super against it. Like I feel like feminism is a great thing that often happens. People where men claim to be feminists, and then someone attacks them for not being a feminist, and they start going after women. All of a sudden, wait a second.
The true feelings come out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What was the real motivation? There's usually something a little darker, and I think that's what this was.
That's a very good analogy. That's better than mine.
I don't think so.
No,
Listen,
I mean,
you actually got to work on the show. I'm working on the after.
No,
show,
but
so
I think you're spot on. I really think that really is about just like our current state of just maniacs online.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in this episode, Abed. This has been so great to discuss the season 4 premiere with you. And thanks again to Tommy Bechtold for joining us. It was so great to chat about this. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it was
really
fun, man. It was
genuine
fun.
thing. Yeah,
Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff. It's very fun.
Awesome.